Robert, let's go. Let's do the one that I didn't want to venture too much into, but maybe there's new information. John Pierce, AWOL. And for anybody who doesn't know what's going on, John Pierce is no longer representing Kyle Rittenhouse, representing 16 of the January 6th defense, maybe 15, over a dozen.
Varies because different ones are firing him every other day, so it depends on the day.
He's representing over a dozen January 6th defendants. I don't know how effective his representation
raised a lot of money in the name of defending these people. We don't know how much because he's not been transparent about it.
So he's raising money off the cases of these kids, or these kids are not all kids, but these January 6th defendants. He's been defending over a dozen. And I don't know if things have been going bad or good, but bottom line, he goes AWOL, doesn't show up to a bunch of meetings. They were called,
he ultimately doesn't show up to court hearings.
But what was the name of what they did in the reverse proffer?
Proffer sessions.
Yeah. So I want you to explain that in a second, but I'll get the facts out. Doesn't show up to a bunch of proffer sessions or reverse proffer sessions. Doesn't show up to court. Has a lawyer substitute for him from his firm, apparently, except apparently that lawyer's not licensed or cannot.
And is currently under fraud indictment.
And he cannot be licensed or is not licensed because he is under fraud indictment from stuff that he did while clerking for a judge, other issues about recording surreptitiously in court. Doesn't look good. So he had this lawyer who cannot apparently represent ethically or legally the clients sitting in on these reverse proffer sessions. Then they ask, where is John Pierce? It's like, where's Waldo, or where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? And at first they say, the guy filling in for him says, conflicted. Then he says he's been in an accident. Then he says he's in court. He's in the hospital with COVID. Then someone else says, no, he's not in the hospital with COVID. Last we hear, he's in the hospital with COVID on a respirator, unresponsive. In comes the prosecution with a notice to court. I don't know what it is, but I know what it is. They're basically saying, we want to get something on the record to make evidence of the state of the file as of now. Notify the court that these defendants are effectively without actual representation because the sub cannot act. We don't know what to do. Court, tell us what to do. This is my theory, Robert.
And they detailed more stuff about Pierce.
Well, first question is this. I don't want to suggest it because it would imply that someone is lying about a serious health condition. In my practice, I have had two people at one point misrepresent diagnoses with cancer in a way that left me feeling emotionally and honestly violated. But I have a feeling that the prosecution knows that John Pierce is not, in fact, ill with COVID, wants to get this on the record so that it's out there, so that it comes out that he wasn't, and then they use this against him. Am I wrong, or is he, in fact, on a respirator, a ventilator, unresponsive with COVID? Or do we know?
No one's been able to confirm that at all. The phone to his offices is apparently disconnected. So nobody knows where he actually is. There's been no confirmation of that. Why he's gone AWOL. What's happened to the money. Why he didn't have a substitute counsel available for these situations. I mean, I always have a lawyer on queue in case for some reason I can't make an appearance or can't do something. Particularly for him taking on this many criminal cases was always, again, this is a guy that has no meaningful, extensive criminal law background at all. Kyle Rittenhouse went through a disaster dealing with him. He still hasn't returned the bail money. He just disappeared. There's rumors of this or that. I mean, he liked some other stuff with his nose. Who knows what is going on. But Cassandra Fairbanks, she's a sweetheart, but that apology letter is going to get longer and longer and longer the more she vouches for people like John Pierce. Some of us told him this is what was going to happen, but this is even worse than I imagined. And the only reason the government isn't demanding his pro hoc get revoked is because they think he's a godsend because he's so incompetent and incapable. But they know they can't overtly profit from this. So they're putting on the court record, hey, by the way, we told everybody that this is a complete S show. So if we happen to profit from it now, it's not our fault.
Well, and just so everybody also appreciates, lawyers, I suspect it's the same in the States as in Canada. They're ethically and basically legally required to have someone who they name to substitute for them in case they get hit by a bus, die of a heart attack. And it's someone who takes over their files, and it's an obligation. So you have to make sure the person is ready to do it. So I presume you have the same thing in the States. But reading this, when I read it, maybe confession through projection, or maybe it's the way I'm thinking, I read it as though the prosecution does not believe the explanation. They want to give credence and credibility to the explanation, knowing that it's going to pan out not to be true. And when they do, after having put this on the record, it's going to be devastating for Pierce. But I don't know what impact it's going to have on the other defendants. But am I wrong? I mean, because if he's in the hospital, and I was reading some comments to the video, everyone's like, well, there's been no confirmation from any hospital that anyone with that name checked in. I don't know if this stuff is public information. There's been no independent confirmation. There's been no specific confirmation. And now we're like a week into this story breaking, where Pierce has been AWOL for a long time, where even if it were illness, it would have been demonstrable by now.
You also have to worry. This is a guy that's been, chasing to stay one step ahead of all of his creditors. He's facing all kinds of lawsuits for tens of millions of dollars of people who have alleged fraud all over the place, kind of, Avenatti style. And maybe doesn't want an Avenatti outcome, and he may not be in the country anymore. I mean, we have no idea. I mean, that was one of the implications. The government didn't go into detail, but that's one of the implications people drew. And the people who are suffering are all the people who were convinced that he was some sort of legal savior by people like Cassandra Fairbanks. And I mean, Tim Pool put him on too. I mean, I told him at the time, big mistake. You don't want to be associated with this guy. It's like, nobody. Not that anyone ever looked at Brian Stelter as someone of admiration, but once he will be mocked for the rest of his life for promoting Michael Avenatti.
The only reason I can give the benefit of the doubt to the, and I will continue to the Tim Pool, maybe Cassandra Fairbanks, but I don't know what she's been doing in terms of the level of promotion, is not everybody has your brain, Robert, and your foresight, and not everybody has your information. Like sometimes you take a picture with someone, you don't know who they are. You do an interview with someone, you don't know what they've said in the past. And not everyone is as up to date and in tune with it. Pierce might be a bit of an outlier of an example because he's so notorious or well known. But if for people who didn't, the people I feel bad for is all these January 6th defendants, because they're being completely unrepresented. And they had no knowledge, no reason to know this was a problem. I mean, there were already warning signs within those cases because several of them were starting to demand a replacement, even saying, please give me back a federal defender. This guy, I can't get a hold of him. He never responds. I don't know what's happening. He's not filing things for me. There was already the warning signs with no motions being filed, trying to join other parties' motions, which you can't do. Join some other defendant's motions in another case, which you can't do in criminal court, in criminal cases. And so there were, but for people there were some people that I warned almost a year ago to the day about John Pierce, and they refused to listen to it and then criticized me for raising it. And, how many bad disasters there do there have to be before you wake up? I mean, they're damaging their own credibility. Who's going to take the opinions of these people about anything in the future when they vouched for? And I think some of these people underestimate their influence. There are a lot of people who really valued some of these people's ideas. I mean, Tim Pool, the way Pool put him on, he asked the question at the end, but don't be associated with this kind of person. I mean, Tim Pool is very careful about who he puts on. This was a mistake. Again, it's how you get sued by those. It's a good transition into those defendants. If I was Tim Pool, he obviously should win the case, and the allegations against him are ludicrous. But the fact that I hired those people would make me reconsider every hiring decision I've ever done and put in new hiring protocols moving forward. It's a tough thing. I mean, this is where you have growing pains. The bigger you get, the more you have to hand out to others in terms of responsibility. And then, people can't don't detect the red flags the way others do. When I had a very modest boutique litigation firm, there were certain things I insisted on doing myself as a rule, because you cannot entrust things to other people if you can't afford them making the mistake on those things. But yeah, hiring is a tough thing. Like you make one mistake, you get burnt once, you'll never make that same mistake again.
Well, and here, his own audience told him as soon as he put him on live, they're like, you got to get rid of these people. And he didn't listen to them. And I bet he wishes he did.
Going back to those videos when Rocco, what's his name? I forgot the guy. Rocco and
his name
Emily.
is Rocco. Do you need any further detail? Like right away, I'm not hiring anybody named Rocco. God bless if your name is Rocco out there, but no.
I don't judge the name. I won't judge on the name, but the comments in that video, and you go back to the original comments and the responses a year later or however long later, and like, yeah, you probably should have listened there. Yeah, no,
if you want to know how not to defend yourself, look at how those two defendants are defending themselves in court.
It's going to be a poop fest. I would love to be the lawyer that has to sift through that.
Can you imagine?